On this episode, we talk with Jon Meyers, who is a developer advocate at Supabase. Supabase is an open source alternative to Firebase. I had to grill Jon a little bit in this episode since I'm a Firebase GD to understand why they use that title, but also to understand the features that they're trying to support. So if you love authentication and databases, specifically SQL databases in this case, check out this episode with Supabase and Jon Meyers. Oh, and if I forgot to mention, we do this thing called perfect picks at the end. Jon has one of the funniest picks I've ever seen, so make sure you hang out till the end and check it out. This episode is sponsored by Builder.io. Visually build on your tech stack. Welcome back, peeps, to Perfect.dev, where we give you cats the freshest dose of dev snacks. Now with your amazing hosts, Alex Patterson and Brittany Postma.
Hello, how are we?
Doing
Welcome.
great.
That's excellent.
So it's kind of funny, I put Supabase, an open source alternative, and I just left it at that because I have all these Firebase things behind me. So we'll have to talk about what it's an open source alternative to.
It's an open source alternative to anything you want. You can do everything.
Right. So before we go too far down that road, Jon, can you fill us in just a little bit of your background and how you ended up at Supabase?
Sure. My name is Jon Meyers. I'm currently a developer advocate at Supabase. I guess my career has kind of always interwoven with some software development or software engineering and some teaching. And so while I was studying at university, I was also teaching some of the intro units, which was fun. And then when I finished that, I started teaching at a boot camp here in Australia called Coder Academy. And then worked as a software engineer for a company called realestate.com.au, which is like the leading real estate listing site in Australia. And then a bank called Up, which was fun, building a digital bank. And then decided I wanted to get more back into the community building, teaching side of things. And so moved into a role in developer advocacy.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that background. So are you primarily a front-end developer, back-end, or what's your flavor?
I guess, my role has always been a full stack developer, technically. Yeah. But I've always definitely had more of a preference for the front end, and have always kind of, I'd say I definitely specialized down the front end side of things, but I've always had full stack in my title because I can sometimes store something in a database and sometimes get it back out again.
Good. So we're almost identical. Perfect. Okay, so I kind of alluded to it, but Supabase they are aggressively, for some reason in their branding, going maybe not against Firebase, but they're trying to go feature to feature. Is there any story behind that? Why Supabase was created and why is it a Firebase alternative in the branding?
Yeah, so firstly, Firebase is awesome. As you can see from all of your awesome Firebase stuff behind you, Firebase is a great product, a great tool. And so one of the founders of Supabase loved Firebase and was building, I think it was a chat application. Building something that ended up being larger scale than just a fairly small product, and ended up hitting some bottlenecks with being able to. I think the problem was writing a collection of writing to a document really, really quickly, having a whole bunch of concurrent writes. And so I think he got interested in the idea of what would solve this problem. And obviously relational databases, kind of that being their bread and butter, being able to have so many concurrent reads and concurrent writes and being able to schedule things so well. He looked at the alternative of building that in a relational database world, and built the original prototype for Supabase, which I think was just the real-time engine. So just looking at how he could listen to all of the different things that needed to happen in the database, and update an application in real time using Elixir. And that kind of picked up some success and became the core of what Supabase is now. I guess they stuck with the building a open source alternative to Firebase, just because Firebase is such an awesome product. Like, it has so many awesome bits to help you get started building an application. So I guess the goal was to build something that could be as good a developer experience initially with building an application as Firebase, but then also be able to handle huge amounts of reads and writes and not have the kind of performance bottlenecks that you might run into in a large application.
So there's some core features of Supabase when we talk about it, and we'll dive into the database part of it too, Brittany. So there's authentication, APIs, database, storage. Am I missing anything else? I guess the APIs are real time as well.
And real time, yeah. So Auth, both authentication and authorization. So being able to log your users in and store account information for them and deal with tokens and refreshing tokens and all of those things that come along with authentication. And then authorization, so writing access rules. And so if you've used something like Firebase, you're probably used to writing access policies to enable read and write actions on data. And so Supabase has a similar thing, but using row-level security and writing policies, which is something that's built into Postgres itself. And what were the other ones? Yeah, so database storage, being able to store just rows of data like a normal database. File storage, so being able to store larger images and videos and things like that. And then real time, so being able to subscribe to any of those changes in the database and be able to update the UI without needing the user to refresh.
So lots of things in one product.
Lots and lots of things in one product.
Yes.
Just everything you might need, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think we can go through a little bit on. We'll start with the database. Since Brittany brought it up, Firebase, of course, is a document collection type of database, which is the primary database that they suggest now. Firebase real-time database is kind of the other flavor of that, which is more of a JSON structured database. So, however, Supabase, as we kind of touched on, it's Postgres SQL database in the backend, right?
Yeah, that's right. So everything, I guess, that Supabase has to offer is the primary thing is that it all wraps around a Postgres database. And so I guess, one of the kind of focuses of Supabase is just to enable and make it a little bit easier to take advantage of all of the cool things that already exist in Postgres. And so, so in a document database, as you were saying, it's you have something that usually represents something similar to a JSON structure. And so this became really popular with the rise of Node.js and a whole bunch of those kinds of full stack JavaScript applications. JSON is obviously a really easy to deal with data structure in those languages. And so, not needing to kind of context switch between your database and what you're writing in code, just being able to take an object in JavaScript, write it to your database or your document database, and then pull it out and not need to do any kind of massaging or manipulation.
So that's like a REST API, right? Is that REST?
Yeah, and so like you could use a REST API in front of that. I just mean the way that the data is stored in the database is sort of similar to the way that you would use it in the application.
Oh, okay.
And so, I think that was what made document databases so successful and so interesting, is just how quickly you could get up and running with something without needing to think right from the start, like designing out the whole structure of your database and what kind of columns and data types and everything that you would need. And so, but the problem that I think some people experience with document databases, I've never reached it. I've never hit a point where I actually need to reach for anything other than a document database. But something that does become a bottleneck eventually for some people is the ability to read and write concurrently a lot of data. And so something that's beneficial about a relational database is that you have data stored in all different tables, and you're kind of stitching together what you need when you need it. And so, yeah, it's a little bit more performant to manage those big bits of transactions.
So I will say one thing about, I'm Firebase GDE and everything else. One thing that's always difficult, like pagination's tough in Firestore. If you want to do counts, that's tough. If you want to do full text searching, that's tough or near impossible. That's why we use Algolia. But there's a lot of things that are tough, and there's workarounds for them like anything else. But the nice part about like a SQL database that's been around for forever. I mean, SQL's been in our industry since the dawn of database, essentially. But what's cool about that is all of these things have been solved in the past. So where some items in a database, when you're off of SQL, there's a high throughput piece to that. So if you think about like BigQuery, Big Table in the GCP side, or like DynamoDB on AWS and things like that, you're probably going to get a lot more performance if you're really hammering that thing. But you lose some things too that you don't get with a relational data, or that you do get with a relational database. So it's kind of fun to go through those. I'm gonna pop up a diagram that I happen to run into. I was gonna put Supabase, and we can talk about this a little further, but onto GCP by myself, and it's interesting. There's some blogs that really call this out, but so I'm gonna pop open. This is actually an architectural diagram that they have out there. So one thing that I want to talk about, Jon, is the open source piece and the stitching together of products. But as we look at this, when we look at the auth piece, Supabase is using GoTrue. When we look at the REST piece, it's using, I always screw the name up of this, but I think it's PostgREST or Postgres.
I just call it Postgres and just like really try to emphasize the T.
Which is basically a REST endpoint that sits on top of Postgres or PostgreSQL. See, I can't do it.
PostgreSQL.
Yeah, I gotta show their faces while I'm doing these. Everyone's laughing. They're so hard to say with Postgres. I hate it. And so then there's a real-time piece, a storage piece, and then kind of a metadata piece that describes different pieces. And the one thing I want to talk about, Jon, is Supabase is not shy about saying we support open source. We also give back to open source. Can you break down like what mentality that is kind of for creating what is like an open source product built upon other open source projects?
Yeah. And so, yeah, I think everyone in the team has always really loved the philosophy of open source, and, getting not just having the people who are building the product making all the calls, but having the community being able to weigh in on things that they would like to build, and then even being able to build them and offer them back to that open source product. Or, if that's something that's not a good fit, being able to fork it and create their own. I think that's something that is definitely a differentiator with Supabase compared to some of the alternatives, is that, yeah, it is built entirely on those open source tools. And so whenever we have a problem that we're trying to solve, or something that we'd like to build into Supabase itself, we spend a lot of time looking at what already exists out there in the community and what we could help, either help by supporting financially, or help by building things into those products. But look at what open source tools already exist that solve that problem. And so as you had up with that diagram, actually, do you want to bring the diagram up again?
Yeah, absolutely.
We can talk through each of those.
I'm so happy I didn't close that tab.
Just open it up and you're scrolling through Facebook again. Just distracted.
Oh, I swear. Come on.
So for the auth piece, for example, we have GoTrue, which is written by Netlify. And so at the moment, we're actually maintaining a fork of GoTrue, I think, because there was some things that we needed to build in to support what we needed to do that wasn't in line with the project. But I think we're looking at merging those in.
Do you know if that's what they use for Netlify identity?
Yeah, it is. Yes.
Oh, cool.
Yes. Yeah, and so that's what's behind Netlify Identity. So GoTrue is the Auth server open source project, and then Netlify Identity is their kind of wrapper around it to make it a little bit easier to integrate with. Postgres for our REST API. We've actually employed the main maintainer of Postgres at Supabase now, and so he, I believe, works full time on Postgres, but from within Supabase, which is very cool because I think what we want to accomplish is very in line, which is
That is awesome.
very cool. The real-time server, so that was built from scratch, and as I was saying before, was like the original piece of Supabase. That was kind of the MVP concept that then kind of kept spinning out of control and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But yeah, so that was an Elixir server that is completely open sourced, but was built custom by us. And then the storage API is a wrapper around S3, I believe, that has the ability to look at additional adapters in the future. And then PG Meta is another open source package just about the meta information about your Postgres database. So all of these different open source tools kind of wrap around a Postgres database, which is another reason that Supabase is so portable and flexible, because you just, at the end of the day, you have a Postgres database. And so if you wanted to move that somewhere else, you could take a dump of your database and put that in AWS or DigitalOcean or anywhere that you wanted to host it, which is, super flexible.
Do you have any idea? I'm just gonna throw this out here before we kind of get into like demo land. Is it possible to hook up to like GCP has Cloud SQL for their Postgres? Do you know if that's a possibility? Can you hook up to any database at this point? Not type of database. I should clarify, like an actual Postgres running somewhere. Can you point a Supabase like version out to that?
I'd have to check with the team. I'm not sure if that's, as far as I know, like we take on hosting that for you if you want to be in the Supabase environment. If you do want to run your own version of Supabase, you can also create a Supabase project just running in a Docker container that you could then host anywhere you want. But yeah, haven't looked at specific implementations like that.
No, it's fair. I'm really curious about kind of the top two pieces of that architecture and if it's possible to kind of swap out that bottom piece, because I think running in a K8 or a Docker container, whatever you want to talk about containerized these days, it would scale out really well. But the bottom part, I'm really kind of interested in if I can hook it up to Cloud Spanner or something like that. So maybe we'll have to have a part 2 chat about what that looks like.
Absolutely. Sounds good.
Awesome. So did we cover everything kind of like Supabase wise on before we jump into the like cloud hosting and take a look at it? Is there anything else people should know before we jump in there?
Just that it's awesome. I really like
I knew that was that's awesome. That's perfect.
I really like the real-time thing. I think that's what attracted me to Supabase initially.
Okay, and we're gonna show that off a bit.
Yeah, why
All
I
right.
started.
So I'm gonna drive a little bit here, and you guys just say stop it. When it really goes awry. So, I'm gonna open up what essentially is like the console within Supabase. I'll jump out a level here. So when you get in here, you're kind of prompted with some different projects and things like that. And when you host, every project is hosted out of, interestingly enough, AWS, of course, because like the storage tie-in and all those pieces.
Because it's the internet, so it's on AWS.
Only like 75%. Come on. So we're gonna walk through kind of a demo, and the cool part is like we can show you under the hood as well as under the hood, kind of like back end view of it, as well as the front end. So what I did was kind of went off one of the suggestions to build a real-time Next.js clone of like Slack. And so you can create channels and you can talk within it and things like that. And as we go through it, there's just some cool parts. Like already I'm noticing there's 5 users that we're using, and this is I want to like clarify, this is the fully hosted version of Supabase on supabase.io. This is not me running my own version or anything like that. And that's, I believe, John, correct me if I'm wrong here, that's the only way you get this kind of back-end view right now.
Yeah, so the dashboard, we're looking at open sourcing that at the moment. Actually, I think there might be more on that very soon, but currently,
I thought I was going to drop a hot tip here. I don't know. This pot doesn't come up for a while. Come on, John.
A hot hint. But yeah, so currently this dashboard view is only available in the hosted version of Supabase, but we're looking at open sourcing our dashboard so that you would be able to do this on your own hosted project as well.
Cool. So just to like right off the bat, I am completely free on this. The database holds up to half a gig, 500 meg, and the authentication, you can have 10,000 users. Storage, you can have what appears to be a gig-ish, as well. So I'd probably blow through that quick. I'm glad I didn't mess around too much on that side. Anyways, what we're going to look at now, I did go through the tutorial. I have this Next.js site up. We've already authenticated, so we've kind of bounced through. And and Brittany's typing already. So we're proving the real time. So,
I was waiting on that. Thank you.
So I do like it's super real time. That's pretty good. I gotta find my other window. So I'm gonna just pop one open so we know we're not like faking this. So here's the coding cat, and John's in here now too. So here's my hello. There's hello. Like that's how instantaneous it is. And in most applications these days, and this is why I think they compare themselves to Firebase so much, there is kind of a real-time or near real-time expectation coming out of those APIs. And so that's the really cool part. So if we dive back in, the power of being on Supabase, I don't want to steal your thunder here, John. So like, just, tell me to be quiet and walk through whatever you want to. But when I went to create this, it was really simple to go into your SQL editor, and they had this Slack clone right here. And for those who are not used to SQL, I apologize, but basically this is a massive like SQL script that actually it's not that massive. I've seen way worse. So it's basically creating different types and different tables and doing drop commands and alter commands. So all stuff that SQL developers, again, the last 30 years have been doing, kind of getting that like new age feel to it though, too, with the rest of what Supabase has to offer. So once this was created, I can jump out to my database now, and immediately in the tables, I can see all the tables that are there that the SQL command created. And so some cool things that you can do about this, or do with this rather, you can start to, use your normal SQL editors, but I can jump back into like my SQL command over here and say, you know what, go fetch all the channels, because I know that the channel table. I can run that. For all you kids, probably don't use star everywhere, but I'm being sloppy.
Especially not on a drop command.
Exactly. That's the worst. And it's got the different user IDs in here. The slug that's kind of coming out, or not user IDs. Yeah, I think that is user ID. Anyways, and the slug for each channel and everything like that. So we can do the same thing with our messages table, right? So let's see if what we were just kind of talking about back and forth, look at that. There's all of our messages coming through. So the cool part is you get all these like amazing SQL commands. I believe if you're running on Postgres as well, you're going to get the functions as well with this. Is that true?
Yeah, that's yeah.
So you get all these nice...
Yeah, so you can write Postgres functions as well. And this is exactly why Supabase is cool, because it is just wrapping around a Postgres database, and so you can take an existing Postgres database or a dump of an existing database that you have, or you can create it in this view, but you can also go to the table editor and not have to ever know anything about SQL ever. And so you can start off with this kind of much friendlier view where you could just create a new table or look at one of the existing tables. And this is kind of that like Airtable / like Microsoft Excel kind of look at your data, which is really nice. And so in Postgres databases, it's you have to write a little bit of scary SQL to be able to create a column or alter your database in some way. But with this view, we could just, if you click the plus on the right, we could insert rows, but you can also just insert columns in that title bar where you've got ID, user status. We've got a plus. We could add a new column to this and fairly easily create
much
more
nicer
data.
GUI than I've seen working with Postgres before.
Yeah, that's right. It's a little bit more friendly than like I even forget what the names of them are. I remember like a MySQL workbench or something, which at least made me like be able to graphically see what was going on, but definitely wasn't the kind of modern experience that this is.
Yeah.
That's really amazing. So there's actually no downtime that just occurred either to alter that table, right?
That's right. Yeah. So as long as you're like creating the structure that your current data doesn't break the rules for. So sorry, what I'm trying to get at is if you tried to create a column that was that had like a not null constraint, for example, so you couldn't have an empty value in that column for a row, then obviously all of your existing rows would contradict that rule. And so it wouldn't let us create it. But since that column can just have a null value until we fill it in with whatever our another column data is, then we can just add columns and change the structure of our database, which is also nice because it means that we're running those checks as we change the structure of our database. And this is something that I really loved about the kind of Rails world, and then getting into Prisma, how they kind of had Prisma migrations, which was, I guess, heavily inspired by active record migrations in Rails. And that idea of being able to change, like create these incremental changes to the structure of your database, because that's what's going to happen as your application grows over time. Being able to really easily do that. But anytime that you change the structure of your database, you're checking that none of the existing data will break when you make that change. And so that's something that's nice about this UI as well, is you get that safety that you're not you're not breaking the existing data in your database as you're changing the structure.
I'm going to try it off screen and see if it blows up. Whew, just an error. Okay, good. I tried putting the not null in there. I thought it'd blow up my whole computer. So I think, like, in a nutshell, like, there's a lot here that when they say that it's an open source solution to Firebase, sorry, there's a lot of pieces that do hold up to that, but I think there's a lot that still needs to be there too. So just a few questions on that side. There's nothing like Lambda support or any cloud functions at this time, right?
Yeah, so Cloud Functions is something that we're working on, and we have been working on for a while now. The reason that we haven't just kind of like rushed out a solution and put it in there is that I think we've kind of set the bar pretty high with how well integrated everything is. And so our file storage, for example, if you create a storage bucket to put files in, it's already kind of tied into the auth of your application. So when you have users signed in, if they upload an image or upload a file, it's automatically associated with that user because it's all sort of integrated very well. So you don't need to add any of that yourself. And so this is the reason that we don't want to just kind of rush into just adding serverless functions is we want to make sure that it ties into the ecosystem in the right way. And is nicely integrated. That being said, we do have hooks, which are a recent addition that are in alpha. So if you go over to the left and go to database, where you just were 2 up, 3 down, 1 up, 5 down, 6 across.
There's a slight delay all the way to Australia. We're doing okay.
And if you go to function hooks on the left, so this is basically webhooks. So if you say enable hooks for this project, this will give us the ability to create a function hook, which is just a way that we can subscribe to changes in a table and then call a serverless function, or call any kind of endpoint with that data. And so you'll see that the type of hook there is HTTP request. So that's what we've created so far. We've got Supabase functions coming soon, and Google Cloud Run, and actually building AWS Lambda functions in Supabase itself. But at the moment, you can just point this to any URL that you have for an API that you're running somewhere else, or something like Zapier, and kind of build those integrations that way. And so we have the ability to tie into Lambda functions, but we haven't built it into the Supabase package itself as yet. But it's something we're working on. Coming soon.
Seems really
hopefully.
powerful once all that gets integrated. That'll be awesome.
Yeah.
I have to imagine a lot of this is kind of challenging because there's probably a large part of kind of this Supabase community that's great, but if you start tying in too closely to like AWS or too closely to XY, like then it really isn't an open source thing. You're back to like a closed source functionality. So how is Supabase kind of balancing like, here's all these great product features with being open source on the side too?
Yeah. I think as I said before,
on the spot, you can tell when you're really positive. I've got it.
Interesting question.
You threw
That's
a
a
very
good point you
tricky
raised
one out.
I think that as I mentioned before, like we try to find any open source tools that we can to do those integrations, and things like our storage is currently running through an S3 bucket, and so we will open source the parts that we can about how you build an adapter that might talk to something like that, and maybe try and build something that can talk to multiple options, so you're not kind of tied into one, only using one thing. But obviously, sometimes there just isn't the perfect open source tool to do what people actually need to be able to do with something. And so in those cases, we try and build a nice wrapper around it, or a nice workflow around how you can integrate with that service.
Yeah, I mean, I really like it as a kind of at least just kind of the getting started piece. Like I could see using Supabase like on AWS and then expanding using Cloud Build or Terraform or anything else to like keep extending past there for sure within a project.
Yeah,
it's really
and
neat.
I think it's nice when you have something like in the world of Jamstack applications and all kind of modern front end development. There's almost always a way to do some kind of server-side logic and some kind of like serverless function execution. And so if we are building an application in something like Next.js, it's nice to just be able to quickly create an API route or a serverless function that we can call anytime data in the database changes. And it's sort of, all within this nice little package where we have our UI and I guess serverless functions and things that might execute over in Vercel or something like that. And then our Supabase wrapping out a database.
That's kind of a good point, because all those frameworks use AWS under the hood for their serverless functions, and we don't know what they do. So
yeah, exactly. Everyone's wrapping AWS. It's just how many layers of AWS you wrap. Whether you wrap something that wraps AWS, or you wrap something that wraps something that wraps something in AWS.
Exactly.
It's great.
Amazon is going to own the world.
Yeah, I'm sure GCP is just a loose wrapper around AWS.
Oh no! We'll go off on this spin for a minute because I find it interesting. I had a very candid conversation with some people at Google and AWS, and the network piece of GCP still sounds like it's kind of the one feature that AWS is having a hard time matching. So for instance, why I am interested on the backend side of this, there's a product called Cloud Spanner that can do almost everything that Postgres can do, but it's not going to allow like functions and things like that. But
Okay.
it's globally concurrent. So like anywhere in the world that database is calling in, it's got the same time to it. And that's the one true advantage on the GCP network, which is interesting. So
You say Cloud Spanner?
yeah.
I'll have to look into it. Haven't heard of it.
Yeah, it's probably the cost is coming down, but it's one of the more expensive products because of exactly that. So
Yeah, right.
yeah, check it out.
Very cool.
I think that's all my questions. I think. I mean, I we got authorization, we've got tables, we've got storage. I mean, what more do you need for websites,
Talked
right?
about functions.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
great product. I think I feel like we're just in the beginning. So Supabase just had their Class A funding. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
that's right. Yeah.
So
We're all
I feel
finally
like
getting paid. No, I'm joking.
I
We're
feel
not
like
getting paid.
things are probably going to just like take off from here, right? I mean, it's now there's some money infused. We're good to go.
Mm. Yeah, we're very excited about what that's going to unlock as well. Like we've been able to do so much with our initial kind of like angel investors and things like that. There's lots to come. Stay tuned. It's very exciting.
That is very exciting.
What do you think,
Money
Brittany?
makes
Your
amazing things happen.
Your next felt demo, Supabase?
Definitely. I mean, I see it everywhere. Like everyone is jumping on the Supabase train. So why not me?
I think when you get real time out of Postgres, there's something right going on, basically.
I just got to find the right app to put it in.
Oh, anything will work. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, no, it doesn't need to. You don't need to justify why it should be there. You just add it.
Just throw it in there.
Yeah, you always need real time.
All right, folks, we're derailing so much that I think it's time for our perfect picks. Who we have first? I guess John was so excited. He got all his picks in way before we did. So I think, John, you're going to have to go first on this one.
You just wait. This vacuum cleaner is the most amazing thing that I think I've bought maybe in my life. Look at all those lasers that it's projecting on the ground.
Oh my gosh.
This
It's
is
like the most
Dyson.
adult pick ever too. Like once you're picking like appliance.
This is the Dyson V15 Detect for anyone that's not watching the video. And this is our brand new vacuum cleaner that's a stick vacuum. So it's like it doesn't have a cable and you don't need to plug it into the wall. It's a battery operated stick vacuum. But it is just so high tech and powerful. It's got this little LCD screen on it, and it analyzes with the lasers how big the particle size is of everything that you're picking up. It gives you these reports on don't you want to know your particle size of your dust particles?
For people on audio,
really
it looks
dirty.
like
it would just be red all the time.
It looks like it's picking up the coronavirus, although I know that's not like the virus. But
that's not good marketing there. But there you go. You got any coronavirus in your house? You just get this vacuum, picks it up straight away. But it is so high powered. I've never had a good vacuum. I think I've always just had the cheapest vacuum or a secondhand vacuum or whatever. And this is the first actual vacuum that I've researched and purchased. And it's if it goes on the highest setting on our floorboards, it literally rips the grout out between the two boards. So that's how powerful it is. You want a vacuum that can destroy your house by making it so clean.
Dang.
Holy smokes. That's an impressive selection that you have going on there. I'm sorry.
And all tied in with the theme of Supabase. It's got the Supabase green everywhere. It's perfect.
It does.
Supabase brand vacuum.
I have to ask you, and maybe they didn't have this in Australia. Do you know what a rainbow water filtered vacuum is?
No.
Oh my gosh. I'm gonna have to quickly Google. Hang on. I gotta bring this up. Here it is. This is like my grandma's.
Are these the old style ones that are on the floor? Huge.
You see this thing?
Oh, where you plug it into the wall and is it one of those ones? Oh no, it does have a unit.
Wall. Okay. You drag this thing around, but it's got water in it. And the theory was always that you're not blowing it back into the air because it has to go through all of this water. But I vacuumed at my great grandparents' house with this water-based thing, It was the heaviest thing ever, but it was,
Yeah.
it was great. I'm glad we're coming full circle to something that's like handheld.
Lightweight and yes.
I feel like that would be very difficult to empty. Do you have to like drain
Oh,
dirty
so
dirt water
gross.
out?
It's the worst. It was always so gross. Yeah. Oh, I don't even want to talk about.
Could you find out how big your dust particles were though?
Negative.
I don't think so.
I could not. I still don't know if I would use that feature that much.
Well, maybe if they're trapped in the water, maybe you see them at the end. You see how much dirt you got out of your.
That's true. You would see
The
everything.
feature
That's
you
how
didn't
gross.
know that you need. Yeah.
Yes.
Once it's there, you just feel blind vacuuming with any other vacuum, not knowing how big the dust particles are.
John, I have to have you go to your next pick or I'm going to buy this thing.
All right, my next pick also, I know it doesn't look like just a parent pick, but this is absolutely a parent pick. So this is a Casio SK1, which is a sampler, like a kid sampler, a Casio sampler from, I guess, the 80s, maybe 90s. And this, I recently bought one of these for our daughter, kind of for my daughter, kind of for me. So I like producing digital music. I love samplers. I love synthesizers and all of those things. And so I wanted a way that I could kind of like share that with my daughter. She's 2, so she's not ready for the big world of music production yet. But this thing is so cool because it's built to be a kid's toy, so it's super durable and can totally put up with her like banging it around and dropping it on the ground and stuff like that. But it's got a little microphone in it, and you can just like press record and like talk into the microphone, and then it like lays it out on the keyboard so you can play that sample back at different pitches.
Wow.
And it's just so much fun.
Is this actually the one from the 80s or is this a revisioned one?
No, this is the one from the 80s. And so I also don't actually recommend that anyone purchases this because it's kind of like a kind of collector's item as well. So don't actually go and buy this.
I'm going to
Yeah,
go look
like
at
I
this
said,
for
rare
Christmas
people.
for my daughter because I have an 8, a 7, and a 6 5-year-old. So sorry, they just changed recently, and every time they change, I have to think about their ages again. But
Yeah.
I play piano, and so I always wanted to get them a keyboard, and haven't yet. And this looks like a good option, but it's only got like 20 keys, right? So she probably can't play.
Yeah, and it's only got 4 voices as well. If we want to get like right into it, it can only play 4 keys at a time, and so it wouldn't be good for like learning proper piano. You wouldn't be able to play like big chords. But yeah, it's lots of fun just for messing around. And she's only 2. She's 2.5, and she is already like, she actually knows like how to turn it on, put it in the sampler mode, sample a thing, and then play the demo song, and then switch the demo song to, instead of being played on a piano, using the stupid sample that you've just recorded. And it's just absolute noise and mayhem and sounds awful, but it's lots of fun.
But that is
Hours of
so
fun.
good for her.
Yeah.
So did you like get this at a garage sale or you had one all this time?
I bought it online. I sorted out and
He
paid.
did the thing he said not to do.
Don't do it.
The
I did the
VSD
thing.
rating is not good. I don't know.
No, it's definitely not like it's probably not what modern producers are using, but it's a lot of fun. Highly recommend if you want to get your kids interested in music and just learning how to be silly.
Definitely.
It's good.
I think, Brittany, you're up next, but we might have to talk about your second pick last because it could be a whole nother hour of podcast, I believe.
Okay.
But I'll let you go and we'll see.
Okay. So my first pick is Let's Learn Supabase with James Quick. And he did like a little demo. He does a Let's Learn series, and this one was on Supabase. So I thought this was the perfect opportunity to send that out. It was just a couple months ago, so it should be pretty up to date. And
Yeah, it's a very good one.
Guy on the right. Do you happen to know him, John?
he's a Kiwi, is
Never seen that guy in my life. I have no idea who that is. That is Kiwi Koppel, or Paul Copplestone, our CEO and founder at Supabase, one of the founders.
Nice.
Awesome. I knew who it was. I was just kidding.
And my second pick, as Alex hinted at, that we may have to have a discussion on. I am not usually a fan of these shows that give you more questions the farther you go into them. But this one was really intriguing, and there were lots of different characters. So I think there were a few episodes of setup. And this last week, which by the time this podcast comes out, it'll probably, the whole season will be available, but we're about halfway through right now, I'm assuming. And it's finally starting to give me like little tidbits of what could have happened. And it's very intriguing.
I'm telling you right now, you're never going to know what happened on this show. It's so brutal. It's like, did you ever watch Fringe?
Yes.
You'll never know. Like,
oh, I loved Fringe. See?
Oh, I loved Fringe too until like the last two seasons.
I can love this. I mean, they're showing some things. I think they're getting to some.
I will admit I am fully watching this and Foundation, but this one's really starting to irk me a little bit. So I'll just leave it there so we don't like spend another hour.
Okay.
It looks good. I haven't heard of it. I will definitely check it out.
Apple Plus, people.
Apple has been like on it with the shows lately. Yeah, and it's super cheap for a streaming service, and their shows have just been fantastic quality lately.
Yeah, I actually watched sorry to hijack another Apple TV pick. Oh, and now I've forgotten what the name is, but it was a documentary about like a music documentary. Oh, now I have to find out what it was.
I'm glad we're hearing John because I think his video froze.
Yeah, his video.
Oh. Okay. All right, you go. I'll find out what it was.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm gonna jump on my pick. We're jumping from Apple over to Netflix. So I watched the first season of Lock and Key. At first I started to watch it with what at that time would have been like my 10, 11-year-old, something like that. Yeah. And very quickly realized I didn't read the whole TV 14 because there was a bunch of kids and I thought it was a kid's show. And so we immediately stopped watching it. So I finished watching the first season. And my wife was like, hey, let's watch something together. I know you have all your nerdy, science-y shows. What about this? I'm like, I've already watched it, but I'll rewatch it with you. And I'm really appreciating it, the second time through. And I'm just frustrated now because I want to, start down season 2, which looks amazing. And now I have to wait. So
it's funny. Oh, you're not watching season 2 yet. Okay.
Yeah. So that might have to be like a season.
That's the caveat.
Yeah,
you were getting mad at my invasion pick, and season 2 of Lock and Key gets a little. I'm not ruining anything. Okay. It just gets a little like I'm not going to ruin your show. It gets a little out there for me.
Okay, that's fair. I think that's fine. See how nitpicky we are tonight? You can tell it's late for us.
It's too late.
It's probably a different day for John.
You're getting bitterness at the end of the day.
I'm coming to you from the future, and I can tell you Lock and Key is still good in the future.
Yeah, see? It's amazing. Things release on like Saturdays and Friday for us, I think. So.
Yeah. Just quickly, my pick was Mark Ronson's Watch the Sound, which is a music documentary by Mark Ronson, who's a music producer. And if you want to, in fact, I think there might be an episode that has maybe that Casio SK1. He kind of like focuses on a different part of music production throughout his musical career. Super interesting. Like there'll be one episode that focuses on reverb, and he'll go to like these amazing places that like places where you record reverb effects and things.
Interesting.
Yeah, very cool.
So just for those who are counting, John now has the most perfect picks out of anyone ever on the show.
He's trying to win.
That's 3 total. That was amazing. All right, mine's way more boring than listening to reverbs, but I thought this was really cool. So this looks like a picture of a Nintendo Game Boy, when in reality, 100% CSS, created by Wasm Chegyam. I always screw up his name. I always see him everywhere on Twitter, but these things are clickable. It's all CSS.
That's so cool.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that wild?
That is crazy. And I have never heard that name before, so I'm going to have to go follow on Twitter.
I think I've seen... Nope. Yep. There you go. That's his full Twitter account if you've ever seen it.
Wonder if it supports the Konami code. If you enter in you know what the Konami code is?
No.
Is that one of those like Nintendo
up,
hacks?
Down,
like
down?
Yeah. That
right,
one. It's
left, right.
Yeah, that.
Start.
I don't even remember it.
Yeah, I don't remember
Like,
exactly
you
what it
just
is,
remembered
but
that.
surely if you're going to build this, surely they have created a Konami code
An Easter egg in there, right?
yeah.
I don't know.
Changes to a Nintendo Switch or something.
I'm totally gonna have to dig into this now.
That would be
I'll
so
have
cool.
to
If it
swap
like
the rest of my
the
evening.
screen would like come on and show you an Easter egg if you put that in.
I
That
just
would
want to play
be.
Tetris on it. Don't you guys want to play Tetris?
I love Tetris.
Absolutely.
I always heard that the Game Boy was a little different in Australia. I don't remember what it was. Might have to look at that.
Right.
Okay.
I never
Like
had a
better
Game
or
Boy.
worse? It's always worse.
No, couldn't be. Everything's better over there. Do you realize I've been trying to get to Australia for like 3 years? We were
Ooh.
supposed
That's a
to
bad
go-
time
Not
to
a good
try to get to
time for it.
Australia.
Do you think they'll ever let us in?
They're not letting us out, so I don't think they're gonna. I think it might be a while.
Could you like sneak off on a boat or something? How would that
Maybe.
work?
I mean, we're surrounded by water. There's a lot of options to.
They
it's
don't
a
have
long
cruises
swim.
coming in either.
No, I don't think so. Not at the moment.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Bad.
I think they're about to start opening back up. Yeah.
We'll see. I was supposed to be like diving up off the Great Barrier Reef. It's not happening.
Oh wow.
That sounds
Right.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Sorry, we have completely derailed the podcast. We'll probably chat offline, after we get done recording here. But so that was everything that I know currently about Supabase. John filled us in on all the things that I had forgotten in my like pre-show, like check out Supabase mode. I would suggest trying it. You wouldn't believe what it actually, can do until you try it. So check it out, supabase.io. Thanks for joining us, John.
Cool
Really
stuff.
appreciate it.
Thanks for
Let us know
chatting.
what you're building. Yeah, thanks for your
Later.
time. It's been great.
Awesome. Talk to you later.